Today's agenda item includes a hearing of the Polish ambassador to Italy, Mr. Schnepf, to discuss the current priorities of the Polish presidency of the Council of the European Union, which started January 1st and will end on June 30th, 2025. On behalf of my colleague, Giulio Tremonti, the president of the Foreign Affairs and Community Affairs Committee, as well as on behalf of the colleagues that are present today and that are connected online, I would like to greet and also thank the ambassador for accepting to join us in our work today. The ambassador is here together with the plenipotentiary ministry and the first secretary from the embassy. Given the short time available, I simply want to mention that the Polish presidency has decided and set forward some very ambitious priorities that fall within a very complicated international context that requires us to be able to provide bold, courageous, and well-coordinated answers. Especially, I would like to mention the importance of the topic, a strong and safe Europe, that has to do with fundamental topics, for example, security, safety, defense, management of migration, protection of borders, and enlargement. We completely share this goal, and we truly believe that safety can be strengthened in a very important way through a strategic enlargement of the Union. Expanding Europe not only increases its geopolitical and economic influence, but is also a strategic choice to be able to strengthen safety on the entire continent by being able to present and especially defend our continent against foreign and external threats. We know that there are some things that risk representing an obstacle to this process. So, for example, the many regulations on behalf of the European Union that not only represent an obstacle to our competitive system, but also does not allow national governments and parliaments to be able to act. This phenomena is especially guided by the growing regulations that have to do with EU lawmaking, and unfortunately it could represent an important obstacle for candidate countries. In fact, on the one hand, we risk quantitatively and qualitatively increasing the AUKUS, and that is the lawmaking body that they need to take in their different regulations before they become member states. But on the other hand, these countries are forced to accept a environment, especially from a legal point of view, that is further away from their local realities. We know that sometimes not everything is respected. We know that this, for example, is a reality in the Western Balkans. In the current geopolitical reality that is characterized by growing international threats and tensions, among which, for example, the acceleration of the enlargement process, we know that the Union cannot afford to completely set aside and forget about the European strategic area. We cannot risk that this is occupied or taken over by non-European powers, for example, Russia and China. Europe must be strong, united, and ready to address these global challenges to be able to truly strengthen its position in the international arena. So I think that for this reason, maybe we need to stop thinking about enlargement only and shift our attention to lawmaking and technical approach to a more political approach. Thank you very much. Ambassador, the floor is yours. President Tremonti, I imagine that you will take the floor later on, correct? So please, Ambassador.
Signor Presidente della Commissione.
Mr. President of the Political Commission of the European Union, President of the Foreign Affairs and Community Affairs of the Chamber of Deputies, honorable colleagues and deputies. I would like to start by truly thanking you for allowing me to be here with you today. I know that there are many important matters to be addressed. We know that there are many important aspects that need to be addressed in our political life. So I really want to thank you for your interest in the Polish presidency. I want to thank the presidents of both commissions for inviting me here today, and especially for giving me the opportunity to present the priorities of our European presidency. It is a true honor for me to be here today with you. We are here in the home of Italian democracy. Nowadays, Italy has a key role in the European Union. In the past, Italy has truly played an important role in creating this big European family. Alcide de Gasperi, one of the founding fathers of the European Union, in February 1949, addressed the Chamber of Deputies with an important speech. According to de Gasperi, it is important to have a united Europe to be able to move forward and to achieve social justice. Our country should be guided by democracy, and this is something that is fundamental for our mediation, and especially to be able to reach a moment of peace. On January 1st, Poland took on the presidency of the Council of the European Union for the second time. So our country is taking this presidency in a very important and complicated historical moment. We are here after the setting up of the new European Commission and after the elections in the United States. We know that we are living in a very complicated international situation. We are faced with many global challenges, and therefore the main goal of the Polish presidency is to be able to catch the attention of countries in Europe, to be able to focus on safety, and especially to be able to truly focus on the strengthening and consolidation of the European Union and its ability to protect its borders. We know that there are many problems when it comes to safety, security, and these are fundamental matters that need to be addressed in our continent that require a strategic action. With this being said, I apologize. I will now switch to English. I still don't feel confident enough to be able to present what I want to say in a detailed way as I would like to. So we know that we're here to also discuss some complicated matters.
The Polish presidency has begun amid a highly complex international environment. Just to mention the ongoing war in Ukraine, growing geopolitical tensions, including in the Middle East, mounting hybrid threats and disinformation campaigns. We have new institutional cycles in the EU, but also the new administration in the White House. Europe has a gigantic economic potential, which we unnecessarily limit with an excess of prohibition, orders, and regulations. We need to be also better at protecting our European industry and agriculture. EU should be able to play a more relevant role and deepen its ties with regions such as Africa and Latin America, cooperating in the spirit of dialogue and true partnership. This is where Italy sets an excellent example of how we should act. Enlargement is the best possible instrument for the European Union to strengthen and promote peace, but the process in the past years has been too slow. In Poland, we know very well what it means to remain outside the European family for decades. That is why we understand perfectly today's European aspirations of the Eastern Balkans and Balkan countries. That is why we will fully engage to support them. The European Union must protect itself and its citizens and take care of its immediate neighborhood. It must give Europeans a sense of security and prospect for development. That is why we decided that the motto of our presidency is Security Europe. We will focus on strengthening European security in 7 particular dimensions: external, internal, information, economic, energy, food, and in the field of health. Let's start with defense, security, and external dimension. We will strive to maximize the EU political, military, and financial support for Ukraine. This is the topic that is on the top of the European, but also the transatlantic agenda today. Russia's war economy is already showing some signs of crumbling, and the EU has to deliver to help push Russia back from Ukraine. We will seek to enhance the EU sanctions against Russia and Belarus, and to improve the methods of counteracting their circumvention. We will organize a dedicated conference on the EU sanctions scheduled for February 25 in cooperation with the EU Sanctions Special Envoy. We will seek agreement between the member states to fully use the frozen assets of Russia's central bank to support Ukraine. And we have some progress in that sense. We will support and seek to continue that no business as usual is applied. We are determined to strengthen transatlantic relations, in particular EU cooperation with NATO and the US and other allies, the UK, South Korea, Japan, and like-minded countries. Let me make a short break in my personal remark due to my experience as former ambassador of Poland to the US. One of the biggest problems was to get the attention and first of all understanding of the American people towards the European Union. I don't know whether you would be surprised or not, but trust me that the majority of the American citizens, in their greatness, they understand they take the European Union as a failed attempt to create the United States of Europe. So the kind of a version that Europe is trying desperately to apply, copying the American model, which is not true, as we all know. The specificity of the European Union is not well understood. So on many occasions I had, talking to the students, first of all, because this is the main target for us, the young people, was to explain what the European Union is and the biggest achievement of the European Union, which is the Europe without war for such a long time and in prosperity. Altogether, if we look into the American economy, Europe is extremely successful. So we have to make this job and bring the countries together. We all should know how important it is to maintain a good and working transatlantic relations with the administration, whoever the American people will elect. But it is based, it has to be based upon the understanding and mutual knowledge who we are, what we want, or what is our nature. We particularly want to advance coordination of the EU-US activity in the context of Russia's aggression against Ukraine. We also want to continue dialogue on global issues, including on China and the Indo-Pacific energy policy and new technologies. Together with European institutions, we will work to prevent possible tensions and trade disputes between Europe and America. And you know very well how important and how vital it is right now. The presidency will aim to stop escalation in the Middle East, continue providing humanitarian assistance to civilians, and stabilize the situation across the region. The development of EU's defense will be a very concrete part of our presidency's program. We wish to build Europe that is capable of facing security threats which nowadays comes mostly from East. Also in the sense of ensuring appropriate industrial production for the defense industry. As you know, Poland is a leader in spending for the defense budget, and not only in Europe actually, it's almost 5% right now. Well, being a country on the border of the full-scale war, it makes the conditions very special, but it is worthwhile to mention it. We will support normalization of relations between Armenia and Azerbaijan, which we see as part stabilizing the situation in the South Caucasus. Another point, revitalization of the EU-UK relations. Close cooperation with the United Kingdom on foreign security and defense policy will be on top of our agenda. And I must say that just recently, this week, the informal meeting of the European leaders demonstrated that the presence of the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom showed exactly how close we are, but at the same without speaking about rejoining the European Union by the United Kingdom, which sounds today impossible. But there are a lot of fields that we can work together, and United Kingdom, London is still close to Europe and is close to our hearts. The presidency will support cooperation with the Indo-Pacific countries, among other things, through a flagship research conference on the European Union in the Indo-Pacific security architecture. The event will bring together independent experts and policymakers from Asia and Europe who will gather to discuss issues of vital importance to our interconnected regions. We will also promote the development of a comprehensive EU partnership with Africa and relations with Latin America and the Caribbean. Well, I know for Italy it's very important because you are planning to have a Italy, Latin America and Caribbean summit pretty soon. And again, due to my experience as former twice ambassador to Latin American countries, I know how important is the Italian presence in countries like Brazil, Argentina, or Uruguay, where I was posted, among other countries. Internal security, protection of people and borders. Again, there are a lot of things that we have in common here. The problem, first of all. We will seek new solutions to comprehensively address the challenges of migration and security at the EU external borders. We will work to reduce irregular immigration and strengthen the effectiveness of return policy, including in cooperation with third countries. Your experience in that sense is also important for the European space, in our opinion. We will work towards an adequate EU response to hybrid threats, in particular the instrumental use of migration as a political tool. We will work to enhance EU and member state capacities for civil protection, disaster resilience, rescue and humanitarian assistance. One of the very contemporary problems is the space of information and disinformation, actually. Every country that is approaching the electoral process knows very well how dangerous is the intervention mingling into the electoral process of any country by the hostile forces using the modern technology. So part of this effort is introducing the concept of resilience councils to disinformation that would bring together experts and pool knowledge from different areas important for the fight against foreign information manipulation and interference. It is particularly important to deal with the crisis situation involving interference by third countries with EU information systems. We will put our attention to the development of modern, secure digital services. Economy, small and medium business, agricultural problems. We will work towards improving competitiveness and building a strong and resilient EU economy. It will also be a priority to restore a fair competition for EU industry in the global arena. We will seek deepening the single market and removing barriers, especially in the services sector. I was pleased to talk to some of the authors of the famous single market concepts for the European Union, and we take this great Italian economist job as a good direction for European activity in this area. Our aim is to reduce bureaucratic burdens in this context. It will be important to make approach to energy climate policy more flexible, move away from penalties and obligations and focus on rewards and incentives. We'll be active in holding discussions on the future of cohesion policy. We will seek revising the EU's energy security framework and promote actions aimed at a full withdrawal from imports of Russian energy sources. We want to address high energy prices problem as well. We will work on enhancing the security of the EU's energy infrastructure. The interconnection system, European system, is extremely important to make the problem of energy more secure and more dependable. And finally, the health security. One of our main goals is increasing the EU's independence in medicine supply. Above, the diversification of medicine supply chains and support for their production in the EU play a key role. Also improving the mental health of children and adolescents and the digital age will be particularly important for our presidency. Allora, ci troviamo in un momento storico e geopolitico difficile.
Right, so back to English. This is a particularly difficult historic moment. We in Poland have a very strong enthusiasm and a very strong belief in Europe, and our attitude, I know, will give an important contribution to Europe that will make Europe stronger and more able to tackle all these challenges. And when facing these challenges, we have to show that we in Europe can lead the world. We can work, and Poland can work together with Europe to make Europe stronger again in the world, to make our defense stronger, to make our competitiveness stronger, to defend our industry and our agricultural policy. And our task is a daunting one, in fact. We want to achieve our objectives, and we will have to work together with the colleagues from Cyprus and all the countries, member countries, and like-minded countries, because today, more than ever, we need a united and strong Europe. We need a union, a European Union, sharing the same vision for the future of Europe itself, to make this future possible. So, as a way of conclusion, let me go back to what St. Francis of Assisi said. You should start doing what is necessary. Then you go ahead and do what is important, and you will discover that you can make all things that are in fact impossible. Our future depends on the possibility and the determination that we put in the things that we want to do, and this is what will make our Europe stronger again. Thank you very much. So, it's not in our agenda yet. It's right, and we have already a number of people that want to have their say. Thank you, Chair. I have listened, attentively listened to what our ambassador said, especially the fil rouge, his appeals coming from a country, Poland, that experienced totalitarianism, dictatorship. So this appeal is launched to us. We Western people have to stick to one another to make it possible for our European transatlantic to stay afloat. We have to keep in mind that today, those international organizations that up to now have been ensuring the respect and the compliance with international rules and shared values are in fact entering a certain crisis. And it's for all of us to see that this is happening because some authoritative, some countries have been showing an aggressive attitude and try and impose their own rules to the rest of the world. So I think we should share the Polish approach. We all know what Poland has been doing towards Ukraine, yet the relationships with China seem to be more complicated because we've seen what happened all along the border with Poland. We've seen what happened between China and Belarus. So it is something new, something we didn't expect, something unforeseen, and yet it did happen. And at the same time in Poland, the first direct train line from China arrived and reached the Polish territory. So what kind of position, what's the position that the European Union will have vis-à-vis these issues? In Europe, we've always wanted to ensure the freedom of speech, which is the basis of our democracies that you mentioned. But in order to ensure this freedom of speech, we need democracy, we need freedom. You have mentioned what happened in the Indo-Pacific areas and the need that we as EU, not just as NATO members, should look at the democracies in that area, the Indo-Pacific Four, as they are called. You've mentioned them. So we should look at those democratic countries, but at the same time, we should never forget that certain situations are for all to see, and we have to bear in mind what the artificial intelligence is, what the cyber threats are. DeepSeek has arrived, and once again, it was unexpected and unforeseen. According to the experts, it seems it is something that goes well beyond Western technology and American technology, yet it has a weak point because talk about artificial intelligence, when you try and write down and ask information on Taiwan or Tiananmen Square, you get no results. As for Taiwan, the result is that it is part of the China, and the same applies to Tibet and Hong Kong. So I believe we all know, the picture is clear to all of us. What is the Polish way to tackle the challenge that is between trade and the defense of rights, fundamental rights and freedoms? And I will stop here, even though I would like to ask you many more things, but I'd like to launch an appeal to those deep roots that have long been forgotten, common roots in Europe between Italy and Poland. I'm talking about the Jewish and Christian common roots. Maybe we should go back to these roots, trying to build a stronger and better Europe. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Porta, Third Committee, Democratic Party. Yes. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for this wonderful opportunity. I apologize. I couldn't be here before. I was otherwise engaged with my political group, so I was slightly late, and I'm sure maybe the Ambassador probably mentioned this issue that I'm going to tackle now. So in that case, I'm sorry for the repetition. But at the end of his speech, the Ambassador mentioned his personal experience in Latin America and to our presence, the presence of Italy, thanks to the fact that millions of Italians live in the Mercosur countries and are at the heart of what in the year 2025 will probably be the most important aspect of the issues between the EU and Latin America. So following the agreement signed in Montevideo and the intervention by Ursula von der Leyen, of course, we are at a moment in time where the position of the different countries becomes vital, and I believe that quite apart from the different interpretations given to the new Trump administration, I believe that we should feel emboldened and pushed to pay more and more attention to this agreement, which is essential. We know that countries such as Italy and Poland will have an important weight in steering the direction, in steering the European Union towards a certain direction. Today, together with our Minister for Foreign Affairs, Mr. Tajani, we heard that Italy has a favorable opinion vis-à-vis this agreement. Of course, there are some criticalities in certain sectors, in particular in the agricultural area. However, I believe that despite the weaknesses and criticalities of this agreement, we will all agree on the fact that it is going to be a very important agreement. And this is the position not just of my political party, but the position of the Italian government as well. I would like to have your opinion on this agreement, on the fact, on the situation, considering that this agreement will also have an impact on the different signing countries. Yes, next speaker, please try and be brief. Honorable De Monte, 14th Committee, Forza Italia. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for your report. I will stick to the priorities given by the Polish presidency, in particular, security and resilience, which you mentioned. As for resilience, we need to have a strong single market. We know that the single market has become what it is today, following 280 different legislative and statutory issues, and a result, we talk about 2,800 million euros that are, this is the worth of our single market. Considering what Ms. von der Leyen recently said about the competitiveness, can you tell us something about these 50 sectors? What are the priorities that you assigned in terms of the single market? And what about the simplification, which is another issue of the competitiveness compass as indicated by von der Leyen, because you mentioned that when you talked about the cohesion policy. What can we do to avoid distortion within the single market, which is the result of the current policy in the field of cohesion? Very soon we'll have to go back to the main parliamentary meeting, so try and be brief. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Ambassador. My congratulations for your Italians. I can assure you my Polish is much worse. Mr. Vignà, you're quite right. An excess in regulation, the European Union, within the European Union, is one of the problems we will have to tackle. But we're not just talking about too many rules and regulations, but also the fact that Europe tends to impose onto us these regulations rather than promote and give and provide incentives, grant incentives to our companies, which in fact, on the contrary, are forced to comply with a number of rules and regulations, such as the stop to, for instance, ICE engines, which is unfeasible and not acceptable. So talking about, for example, the fact that apparently there's an new electric car that's going to be manufactured in Poland. So we know that in Poland, coal is and remains a very important energy source. Is it true that the Mr. Tass, the president of your Council of Ministers, has already expressed doubts as for the competitiveness in terms of employment rate as well, about what the previous administration within the European Parliament, the various tasks and engagements that were taken by the previous administration? So can you tell us something about possible changes to propose during your presidency, in particular climate-related objectives that, in my opinion, are too stringent, too ambitious, zero net carbon, 50% carbon reduction. It's an agenda that is really too much. What about the renewable energies, as it was rightly said by the head of the President of the Council? What about the consequences in the employment rate? What about the stop by the year 2035, stop to all ICE, internal combustion engines by that date? Is that possible? Is that not going to negatively impact the employment rate in Europe? These are questions that are coming from different European countries. So thank you for all you're doing, and we of course will support a strong and united Europe for the future. Thank you, and thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Chair. I appreciated what you said about the priorities of the Polish presidency and the common values between your country and our country. We are aware that Poland and Italy will work together. We will give you our best support. I have two remarks. The interference of hostile and external third country interferences. What kind of actions do you think the European Union might want to devise to tackle these third country interferences? And how can we counteract the need for further technological development with the need not to increase also the existing so we have over-regulation, excessive regulation on one hand, and the need to streamline and reduce red tape on the other hand. What about HIV and other health issues that seem to be quite important right now? And I'm talking about our children, not children of other continents. There seems to be a problem of an access to important pediatric drugs for TBC. To fight TBC, there seems to be a lack of access, an insufficient access to important drugs against TB, against HIV. So there seems to be two parallel proceedings, one in the EU and one for the US. So there seems to be two different approaches to produce these drugs. And how do you think this is an important topic? It is a practical topic, in my opinion, that should be tackled at a European level. Thank you.
Velocemente, grazie.
I will be very brief. Thank you. Thank you, President Vigna. Thank you, President Tremonti, for this meeting. And greetings to those who are here today representing the Polish Republic. Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador. You mentioned a strong Central Europe. You also mentioned the possibility for our enterprises to be competitive, especially at the international level. And you also said that we need to step away from Russian energy sources. So very briefly, I'm wondering what is the compass, let's say, that Poland is going to offer to the European Union to be able to actually make it possible to move away from Russian energy sources and therefore to also be self-sufficient and to be able to ensure the costs that can actually increase our impact on the international market and at the international level. Ambassador, please.
Potrei dire tante domande.
I could start by saying that you asked many questions to one single person.
U.S. politicians and then people who have the influence in your country, and not only this country, but Europe, you know very well that during 6 months of the presidency, we will not solve all the problems that Europe is facing. Although we may initiate or put what we have on our side is the energy, enthusiasm of the Polish people, perhaps because we are relatively new, although we don't feel that young, but still the energy to make the Europe strong. What it means, I will refer generally to some questions you made, and perhaps some of them more specifically. So, if Europe wants to be a real partner to the growing power of the global world, and I'm talking about the Asian forces, Global South, South Africa, Brazil, other countries that are growing and becoming a real players, Europe needs to be stronger and to demonstrate its force, which comes from unity. This is one precondition. Secondly, the changes, dedicating more money, more force, more attention towards, unfortunately, military power. Secondly, defending the frontiers, the European borders. And thirdly, the new technology and education. So these are the most important, probably, mechanisms that may make Europe a strong partner to make, as one of the new world leaders says, good deal. So to make a good deal for Europe starts with making Europe strong and reliable partner. We are 27 countries altogether. We may have individual different interests, but let's find the main path for all of us, so for the whole Europe. And I would say that the Polish presidency, what the Prime Minister Donald Tusk is successfully trying to expose during the recent informal summit of the European Union, is that identify the common goals of the whole Europe. It is dedicating attention, money, also money, to those areas that are indispensable to make Europe stronger. Now, the China problem is, of course, one of the big problems to shape the relations with the country that on many fields is breaking the international rules. And we are aware of it. I would say that it's hard to, I should respond as an ambassador of a country that is fulfilling its presidency, not my own opinion. So, well, for your curiosity, I have one. But we will not, we will work with other countries, we have to work with other countries to shape the European Union policy towards the main problems. And it's beginning. We are indicating what, according to us, according to the Polish presidency, is important to work with. The relations of the European with China, and it's not a fresh story. I remember years ago when I was undersecretary in the ministry, and I was having the conversation, it was like 15 years, more than 15 years ago in Brussels, and we were talking about the same things, actually, that there's a growing technological giant that may use the force differently, that can jeopardize the interests of Europe and the position of the weaker countries. We have weaker countries in the European space, and we can see even, I will not mention them, that actually using the economic factors, the economic instrument, Communist China is successfully influencing the policy. Taking the ports, installing in technological devices in the territories, so entering the European Union space easily without barriers. So we have to, on one hand, to remain open, but at the same time identify where the threats, where the danger comes from. And we will work it out with other members. So Italian voice, of course, through your government, your prime minister, through your members of the European Parliament, should bring the final decision, what will be like the policy. I can only say that, and I remember it very well, for those who are particularly interested in some visions of the future relations, possibilities of the EU relations with China, with the Communist China. It is the report prepared by our current Minister of Foreign Affairs, Radek Sikorski, who was leading a study group in European Parliament, and they prepared a very deep, profound document on that, showing the 4 possibilities, 4 fields that we can work on. Mercosur, I would say that it's a big part of my life. I was there in Montevideo when the Mercosur was born, and the first agreement in 1991 was signed. And it's extremely important for those countries, Paraguay, Argentina, Uruguay, and Brazil. For Europe, some of the items that are included in the proposal of the agreement are unacceptable from our Polish position. I know very well that also Italy has many doubts on that. So we have to work some new proposals, remembering at the same time that if we don't do that, no doubt that other countries will be there. And we are talking about Brazil. Brazil is like a continent. Argentina. When I was in Buenos Aires many times, traveling from Montevideo, in a certain moment I thought that I'm in Italy. People speaking the way and the lifestyle. So I understand the importance. And we have to do this effort, understanding how important for the democratic process and the economic development of those countries is the agreement with Europe. We made it with Canada, very successful. I didn't mention here Canada. Canada is another example of a country that sees Europe all of a sudden, guess why? Sees Europe as an important partner, and we have these free trade agreement with Canada working very well. So we would say Mercosur in future, great, but we have to adjust the conditions not to make our agriculture, our producers, suffer. And for the time being, as I say, for the Polish government, the shape of the agreement is unacceptable. Well, the Green Deal is just our role. We are not the leaders in Europe as far as the green technology. We are one of the countries that is working on it with many difficulties. Poland traditionally was one of the centers of the heavy industry. The coal mines is the heart of our people, I must say. So make a change is a very painful road for us. But we understand that the Green Deal should not destroy the industrial power of Europe at the same time. So make it the way. I will not tell you we will do this or that, because we have this power to make Europe change the policy. We can propose the topic, we can propose the solutions perhaps, but only the European Union as a whole can accept and introduce the new policy. In our opinion, well, the Green Deal cannot make a harm to the industrial power of Europe, particularly seeing what is the direction that other countries, particularly the United States, but also China, are going. So we cannot abandon not only people, but the power of the European industry. Well, the car industry is one of them, and you know it very well. It is important in Italy. It is important in Poland. Well, your company is in Poland, and we know your success is our success at the same time. Well, hybrid threat is it's so broad. I understand that one of the issues is the migration policy, of course, because it is being treated as a political tool. I mentioned it. So distinguish between the humanitarian role of the European Union. Our tradition cannot put in threat the security of our citizens. That's the point of the start for the discussion and taking seriously the issue of asylum, of the relocation, to end up with the fictitious practices that pretty frequently we meet. Energy supply. Well, I know that it's hard to imagine that, well, all of a sudden the traditional source of the supply of energy materials is ending. But Europe learned how to live with it and how to make a change. We have new sources, Norwegian fields, we have the liquid gas. Europe has changed through interconnectors that we have. We feel more secure. What we think is we cannot let, again, make the energy materials a political war weapon. That is our experience. And I remember a couple of years ago also Italy felt these cuts in gas supply because of exactly the political use of energy sources. It's it's a beginning of the discussion again. This should be a European Union, no, much better. European Union should be a European Union practice to think more seriously about it and take perhaps sometimes seriously what is Polish experience. I remind you that several years ago when we were talking about the threat coming from the east, and after 2014 Crimea invasion, many people, many politicians, many countries even, they were saying, well, the Poles are simply anti-Russian and they have the phobias and things like that. And today they say, well, you were right. You should have thought about it earlier.
Ambasciatore,
okay.
Scusi, dobbiamo proprio andare in aula.
Yeah, I'm a little bit outspoken.
Bene, grazie.
Okay, thank you, Ambassador. Thank you very much. The hearing is now over. We are going to